is Landed in Leadership and Enlightenment, a podcast where the guests are exceptional humans that have faced their fears to crest into their best selves, growing into a way they can help their communities, creating opportunities, and sharing their secrets and their tips that they learned along the way. Without further ado, here we are, my friends. Have a great time today and enjoy Leadership and Enlightenment. Matt, this is a special day for me, my friend. We've been talking about this for a couple months. It is the true friendship today. I know we met under circumstances of business, but over the last couple of years, you and I have kept in touch in a way where I think the industry would be proud of what we've created. How's your day going, bud?
It's good. I'm enjoying a little bit of a rainy day here in Arizona, so it's good for the plants. Nice, cool, cloudy day. It's a nice change of
Yeah,
pace.
I love that.
Reminds me of being back home and
What?
it reminds me of being back home and growing up in Connecticut, where it was gray and rainy a lot of the time. So
I love that.
it's
Tell us
nice.
about Connecticut, bud. How was it growing up there?
You know what? It was great. I was outside all the time, all types of weather. You know, my grandmother always kept a great garden. We were always outside, so it was like being in nature's laboratory, always just exploring, looking at things differently, and just, learning the environment. Very peaceful.
Yeah, my grandparents they raised their family in Silver Springs, Maryland, and we would always fly in from the West Coast, and it was such a treat because high desert and back east is such a different look, and the green trees, and it's just there's always a feeling inside I would get an energy from it that felt like home, even though I never lived there. Very very interesting in that.
Yeah, yeah, as you're connected to something different, right? Like you're being out in nature. It's different from where you grew up, and you're exploring it, right? Because it's brand new to you.
Yeah.
And every time you go back, you get greeted with that. It's nice.
Where did you grow up again?
So I grew up in Connecticut in Wallingford, southern New
Wallingford.
England, out right near New Haven. Again, just one of those small towns, like 40,000 people, I think, like at our max, right? And now I live in a city of over 200,000 people, greater Metro Phoenix area, almost, 5.5, 6 million people. It's crazy. So it's completely diverse and different styles of living, but I operate the same. I get out into my community, I walk the streets, I explore. And so everywhere I am at, it feels like home because I'm out in the mix.
You are a true human like that. I know. I've watched you experience, and you really do enjoy the day as it is. If there's not another person I know that can take stock in that and realization of you. Well, what was it like to grow up in Connecticut? I could tell you in Vegas, we grew up and it felt like a John Hughes movie. Middle 80s, everything was like 16 candle, it was a very exciting time, a great time to be alive, it felt. And we didn't have a lot of fear back then when we were kids. We really kind of grew up and enjoyed playing sports in the streets and getting rough with others on occasion, but it never led into anything really super serious or dangerous.
Yeah, I think we all were inspired by those movies of the day. So we wanted to be those characters. We wanted to have those experiences. But, Connecticut is, it's good hardy folk, right? It's you dealing with lots of weather. Even like we would go to the beach when it was rainy, drive the 30, 40 minutes to the ocean and go in the water and just enjoy the day and just in nature because it was gonna rain no matter how sunny it was, right? It would just kind of roll right in. But Connecticut too, the experience growing up there is that you were always kind of hands-on with things, right? Like, and my grandmother really instilled that too, is, when you're part of the community, no matter how old you are, be a help, not a hindrance, was one of her common phrases. And sort of led to that spirit of volunteerism with me early on, whether I realized it or not. That sort of stuck with me as I've aged and moved to different locations and just trying to be a help to the greater community, people I know, whatever it is. But Connecticut too, I was skateboarding was a popular pastime for me.
Really?
Helped expose me to travel on a lot of different levels, not only in my region but across the country. And so the act and the art of skateboarding where you're looking at different obstacles, different challenges, and just always kind of moving around, keeping in motion. And you're doing this with like your group of people, your friends, and creating, memories that, have lasted lifetimes and friendships, 30 plus years in the making. Um, and just always exploring things differently and looking how, things you could fail at any one of
Yeah.
these stunts or tricks.
Yeah.
And that keeps you resilient and also keeps you looking at how to do things differently so you can land the trick, so you can, have that momentary moment of flying through the air all but briefly before gravity takes back in and you're rolling away or you're rolling on the ground, right?
It always feels like you're higher in the air than you actually are, too. I find this interesting that we all develop in the same way as humans through different mediums. And skateboarding was for you. I played high school football, and it was like my time to be honest with myself, I think, to realize like just because I wanted to see something happen a certain way, that there were other things around that that were factors. I wasn't physically built for it, is what I had to actually get down to. And I realized that I had created a place for myself on the team because of the camaraderie and realizing like there was this interaction going on. And I think the thing that really won, the audience per se in my friendship circles was them watching me face my fears and realizing like maybe I wasn't built for this, but I was still running into that huddle. I was still taking these shots like everybody else. And they really, you found that when you're able to find that place in community that you can gain strength from. And I have to imagine it felt the same way in your skateboarding community.
Yeah, and it also forces you to be more creative, right? So in the wintertime, we'd get shovels and brooms and figure out, find a parking garage somewhere and clean it up a little bit so you could still skate and still practice what you love, keep moving around. And then the act of all doing all that warms you up. So then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm not cold anymore. But then when you do take the slam and you hit the ground and it's, -5 degrees, you really feel it. But then again, you pick yourself back up, you get back up and figure out how to not fall again.
Yeah. Well, this is a big thing because I think, when we were raised in the 80s, we were forced to do things that allowed us to learn. And we're seeing, the community around us grow now as a world. And these factors are changing. Those mediums are changing. People are learning those lessons in different ways. And we also have to adjust to those as being elders and helping learn and being supportive and coaching. You have a beautiful family, my friend. Tell us a little bit about how you met your wife, this person that makes you look so good in this world.
Yeah, well, my wife's fantastic. We actually met, I was taking art classes. So again, skateboarding was that outlet towards further creativity and my schedule, I was taking some painting classes, but then the schedule changed at the art center. I was taking classes. And so I'm like, oh, pottery, this came up and I've got some free time on Wednesdays. Let me take a pottery class. And I went in there and knowing nothing about it, and it was a lot of an older group of ladies that were in the class. And then my wife shows up. She had hit traffic coming from her small town, and she's like, "Oh, I've been taking pottery for over 10 years." And at that point, she was already had a great amount of skill and mastery. And so, we developed a friendship. Like in the class, she would show me how to do these different things, and we'd go out for lunch and coffee and whatnot, just good friends for a really long time. And then eventually we found our way back together and it got married and now celebrating over 21 years in marriage, but a relationship of over
Congratulations.
28 years. Yeah. So
Wow. Wow.
exciting. Yeah.
And the serendipity of it all. Just if you ever think about how that situation, you arrived at that same place in pottery. I mean, like, what an abstract way of running into your wife.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, you don't know who you're going to meet, one day to the next. And, I could have signed up for a different class altogether, but I'm like, yeah, this sounds interesting. Let's go and check it out. And, long story short, now, again, she's still working in pottery and ceramics, but then also teaching art. So it's great to kind of see how, she's progressed and how her talents have taken her everywhere she's wanted to go and study as well. And that's what brought us to Arizona.
Oh, really? Pottery?
Yeah, pottery. She wanted to study at Arizona State University. She also grew up in Connecticut and was looking for a really advanced program. And ASU has one of the most sophisticated ceramics programs in the country. And I said, well, you know what? Let's make the change. I had lived in California for a little bit prior to that, and so I'm like, let's make the adjustment and come out to Arizona. We moved to Tempe 26 years ago, almost
Whoa.
27 now, and instantly started to find all of those connection points that we had back east, right? We had the points of interest in the arts and music and, dining and the good weather. And it was a lot more affordable. We saved a lot of money by moving to Arizona at the time
Yeah. And those
compared to
years.
living back east. Yeah. So we've been here, and I thought, oh, maybe we'll be here for 4 or 5 years, but during her studies, but we've stayed. It's been an incredible journey to grow with the community, her and her ceramics and pottery career, and then again my various careers that I've had. But when we moved out here. So I worked in the toy industry, I've worked in sustainability, a little bit of everything, and now in tourism for almost 13 years.
And you're made for that job, brother, or for that lifestyle, say. You no disrespect to the actual mayor of Tempe, but I always consider you the mayor of Tempe. I gotta
Well,
say,
thank you.
you approach your lifestyle as a quality of life, and it shows through in the way, you build relationships in business. And this is a podcast about discussing leadership and how we grow through it and how we understand how we're connected to it. And you display that naturally. It's always been one of those things that I've really taken back from. You introduced our company to Tempe it was 2 years ago. You brought us all down as a team from Meetings Made Easy, and you showed us through different set of eyes where the value of Tempe is, and it's burned in my brain now. I can't not mention it to every single client I go in. And just the fact that we did curling in the middle of the summer when it's 110 outside, and just the experience itself. I know you've got a lot of feelings towards this style of connecting and growing your business model. Why don't you share with the audience? Most of them are event planners. Like, how do you see this connection between third-party brokerages, clients, Tempe, and what you do for a living?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is kind of at my core is how do I help anybody I encounter achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve, right? So it's whether it's holding a conference, a meeting, whether it's a sporting event of some sort. What are those things that people need? And so by me always being curious and learning daily about the local businesses, about how the hotels are operating, how the venues operate, I've done all the work for you, right? So then when you come to me and say, Matt, I've got a group that needs X, Y, and Z. They need this many hotel rooms. They need these many offsite activities. I can then put it in front of you in a very succinct way and say, Dean, based on what you need and what your clients need, here's the best fit, and here's the next best option if there's no availability for the first go. And by just kind of taking you through that step, it's really important. And again, as a CVB, Convention and Visitors Bureau, our goal is to help you and your clients really have the most impact and benefit and save time, money, and energy, right? There's a lot of places to go. There's a lot of places to see. Clients probably come to you and say, "Hey, we want to go to Arizona. What city would be best for us?" And you don't know all the makeup of all of their attendees, but you're going to give them the best options based on what they need. So if I can help you navigate that in a more succinct fashion and what matters to you, then that's the win. Now, if I don't happen to have it for any reason, if there's not the right type of property or the venue, we've got our great surrounding cities as well that we can say, hey, Dean, let me introduce you to the folks in Phoenix or Scottsdale. They can maybe help you because they have a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that, what your group is looking for. So
Yeah.
I think it's just this ecosystem, right? So you're coming to my environment. I'm the expert. I'm the guide. I'm going to take you to what makes sense. And then hopefully when your clients are here, they're going to get to experience my Tempe, that locality that I live in every day. I live in Tempe, I work in Tempe, I play in Tempe. I'm going to curate all those things, and hopefully the group will come away with something special. And that's why people keep coming back to us. And also, we're easy to get to, right? So
Yeah.
you fly into Phoenix, and 10 minutes from the airport, you're in our downtown at our properties, which is incredible.
It's truly 10 minutes too. I think it was 8 when I actually went back. And as far as one of those pillars of making decisions, I don't know if you could think about it in a different way that would make any more sense to having an in-and-out corporate meeting or even an incentive trip where you're kind of shaving time off the ends. Obviously, Phoenix Airport is a hub in a lot of ways, so it just really kind of benchmarks you in that consideration. And yeah, beautiful properties. I also believe Tempe is amazing because it's a safer environment knowing that you're on the college campus, and there's a lot of opportunity there and a lot of amenities in the neighboring areas that are really cool to walk to for restaurants and things of that nature that you don't feel like you're having to necessarily drive to.
Yeah, I mean, once you're here, I mean, 9 times out of 10, you could be just out and about. Also accessible city. The city has undergone some major infrastructure um, additions that kind of go up above and beyond. We hosted the National Veterans Wheelchair Games back in 22, and they had a great experience with the veterans and the athletes competing in over 26 different competitions. It was an incredible event to see in our city, and the city is like, hey, is there anything we could do better? And the group suggested some different things on infrastructure, and the city has now undertaken those, and hopefully we'll be able to host that event again with improved city sidewalks, modes of transportation. And that's the other thing is we've got great public transit. We've got orbit circulating buses that go to our different neighborhoods. We have a streetcar that takes you through downtown, through to our stadiums. And then we also have light rail that connects the Phoenix airport to downtown Tempe, to downtown Phoenix, and to downtown Mesa. So, depending on
Ideal.
how you want to get here, all roads and rails and things lead to Tempe.
That's awesome, brother. Well, also in the idea of knowing your town well, you also have this innate sense of how to connect with people. And if you could share a little bit, maybe there's somebody out there that's getting in a new job or they're trying to create an opportunity for themselves and they're walking into someplace cold, essentially. And how would you approach that? What would you give them for some tips to grow into that?
My biggest, sort of course of direction, I just tell people to be curious and meet the person in front of you for where they're at that given day. I know, from in this industry, there's a lot of things to connect and present to clients, but sometimes it's, hey, let me get to know you. Like, I know you like coffee, ask people where they're originally from too. Like, where did you grow up? Just having that initial conversation breaks the ice a little bit, and then it's all the follow-up. And now I know Dean a little bit better than I knew him before. I'm going to follow up with all the things that we have to offer, but I'm not going to inundate you with that as soon as I meet you in a, say, 8 to 10 minute meeting, right? And I had the distinct opportunity to meet somebody from the Hyatt Hotel Group at Connect Marketplace this year, and it was his first show. And I
Mm.
said, "Hey, one of the things is obviously you have your book of appointments. So again, introduce them to who you are." And I said, "But go around to the other booths in the hours when you're not in the appointment schedule. Get to know the vendors. Learn about what they're presenting because you never know whose service you may need for a future group." And I just said, just make sure your follow up is succinct and make sure it's personalized to the conversation. And his follow up to me, which I thought was impressive, was he sent me a thank you video, a little quick
Huh,
phone video
cool.
thanking me for helping guide him around the show since it was his first time. And again, it's just kind of sharing the best practices. I think that's one of the biggest things I lead with. I'm going to share the best things I have to offer or have found me success or have helped other people I know be successful. Because if we all have a roadmap, we can all do the things, right? But if everyone's kind of keeping it all locked down, it's like it's a trade secret. No, it's go be a human, talk to another human, and
Yeah.
connect however you can. Now, granted, you're not going to connect with everybody. Some people have different personalities. They communicate differently. But I think when you just kind of connect at that real base level, that's where the business is the byproduct of it all. They're like, hey, I remember working with Matt. He asked me a really a deep question about something or shared something that I found was important and find that common bond. And from there it just grows. So I have been a good communicator in meeting people. And I think it started young. My grandmother always put me out into the community with her. So when we were, at a function or an arts festival or learning about something within a culture in my community, got to meet everybody and handshake, you know, great people just right where they're at. And you sort of build those memories.
So true. I mean, I had to learn this myself. Coming out of Vegas, we were very input in, value out when I was growing up in my career. Coming out into the world and growing into an environment where your community really depends on you and not necessarily for a specific skill set, but because of your connections, I started realizing it's more about referral marketing to me. It's about taking that idea, that word sales out of it and realize like our job is literally to connect people around us. And I think that you gain a lot of value when you put that effort forth and you realize like people know who you are. You don't need to oversell
It's
that part.
No, it's true. And sometimes you never know how you're going to help someone else. Like I remember probably like my second or third year working at Tempe Tourism, I had a client, they were ready to go to contract. And all of a sudden, at the last minute, the CEO came to her and said, our board wants us to go to San Diego for this next meeting. So
Ouch.
we were like, she was ready to contract with the hotel. It was a good sized group, 150 people of attendees. And so she's like, I'm really sorry that this isn't going to happen. And I go, well, listen, I've lived in San Diego area. I've also been to San Diego Comic Con for ten years in my prior career. I go, here's some great dining establishments that your group could really benefit from. And here's some hotels that I've stayed in downtown San Diego that were great experiences that would probably meet the needs of you and your executive team. Well, that little info that I was able to, just share. She was able to plan her program, but she actually then about 3 years later brought that program back to Tempe. So again, you never know, like that little bit of knowledge can go a long way for somebody else. And again, there's
Yeah.
plenty of business for everybody. It's just how do you get there? It's just help
Yeah.
people out.
Well, I think it's a fluid business too. If we don't look at it like a stop and start business, but we look at it like there's always this potential around it. Just had the same thing happen up in Denver. My client just couldn't make his mind up. He was between two properties, both high end, both amazing, obviously price points involved. But to him, it was really that gut check of how do I feel about it? And this is, coming out of the Bellagio for many years, that was our forte, is that we understood that there was an emotional connection to making this decision. It wasn't a sales decision. It was an emotional decision. A lot of the factors you can't really align and like do these 10 things and you're going to get business. It's more ideal of how do you work around these 10 things and find that best connection point. You and I've always bonded around that. I think, taking the business off the plate, we both feel like there's something within us that's driving us and helping and coaching us. And that's actually the theme of the podcast, Leadership Enlightenment. When I met you, Matt, I saw that light in you. I could see that
Thank you.
you cared, that you were, uniquely authentic for the time frame. I mean, a lot of people when I met you back then were still reeling around in their own little worlds they created for themselves. And I think we're all moving closer to this authenticity where we can agree to. But you've been one of those mentor coaches for me over the years to watch you work and see how you've maintained your life around that. Was there a specific time in your life where you kind of were struck with that you had this additional help around you that cared about you and loved you, but wasn't necessarily connected to where we're at now?
I think one of the things is, sometimes you say, "Oh, I'm self-made," or I did all this hard work to get where I got to be. And I think at the end of the day, it's you got to look back at who were those like teachers and guiding forces of things. And I had this English teacher in high school, Robert A. Harris, and I had several courses with him throughout my years of high school. But one of the things that he always sort of put before us, he goes, every weekend we have a great city 2 hour train ride called New York. You could get to Manhattan, and at that time it was like the train ride was $5 each way. And he goes, go out and experience the world. Don't just sit on the couch and watch TV all weekend. Go and experience the world. And that just resonated so much. And I had my uncle Bruce Connelly lives in New York City. Shout out to him. But also he's Barkley the dog on Sesame Street. So another fun
Really?
fact.
Wow.
He is. And so I would go to New York, go see a concert, go shopping, experience new food, all at the low cost of $5. And then, getting to experience the city with my uncle, right, from a very young age, always taking me to things that were that next level thing, whether it was a performance, whether it was music, just walking in the park, looking at the history of the city. And even to this day, as at 51 years old, my uncle is still teaching me about little things in the city which he lives. And again, he's
That's
very
so cool.
curious. He explores. Listening to those instructors and teachers. I also had a boss that was, again, very challenging at times when I worked in the toy industry. And he was
What
always
did you do
hard
for
on
the toy
us.
industry? Sorry. What did you do for the toy industry? We got to know before you
So
go into your boss.
I had a bunch of different things. So the first, I did event marketing. So I set up at baseball stadiums with our products and help raise money for ALS charities. And so got to, again, really see the country that way. Then I worked my way into sales, did some product design, but then also went into licensing and marketing for the company. And when I
Right.
left after 10 years, I was the executive director of licensing and marketing, working with all the Hollywood studios. So again, always curious, always learning. So, I said, I started
Yeah.
out mopping the floor. I worked my way up to fries,
Yeah.
again, just being curious and saying, put me in, let me see what I can do. But I had this one sales boss there, and he was always hard with us, and again, he was always like, you're only as good as your last sale. So if you didn't move any product or sell anything that day, you really weren't doing your job. So he was always kind of riding us. And I asked him one day, I go, why are you always on us? And he goes, well, I'm just preparing you for the outside world. The
Oh,
outside
good.
world is not always nice. It's
Yeah.
not always going to be easy. Something is going to happen, and I am preparing you for it. And I remember this. directly. Probably a couple years later, he had moved on, and I had a client that was we were doing a big NFL program for a vending machine toy, and all the packaging of all the product that the client had ordered is like a $4 million order. It's the first of its kind. Basically, the packaging was all incorrect, and the client called very upset, as you can imagine, and they're like, "We're not gonna accept this order." And I'm like, and I was getting ready. It was just before my wedding, getting ready to go on extended
Yes.
vacation. And I said, well, you know what? Let's figure this out as a partner, right? This is a hard situation. And we flew out there. We figured it out. We figured out where the process at the factory and the design team, something just got a glitch. And we manually repackaged everything in a very short amount of time. And the client realized, like, hey, you're in it all the way through. They kept the order. We figured it out, and crisis averted. And so again, a very hard situation can be resolved, right? So it's
Yep.
it's just how and how you let things rattle you, or you're like, all right, let's figure this out together. Again, it's
Yeah.
not always going to be seamless. It's not always going to be easy, or the
No.
outcome may not be what you want. But at least being prepared for it. Again, who knew that this was the situation? But we got it done, and I think that's
Yeah.
what people need to sort of realize. Like, it's not always going to be easy. So I sort of appreciated that sort of that toughening up from my old
Yeah.
boss,
I could see
because
that.
you never know, right?
You don't, and back in the business world, the world we're in now, it's just all these little things. They bring you into this growth of who you are, where you're going, what you're tapping into. I call experiential learning. When I was growing up myself, I was the guy that it learned through TV. We weren't a travelers. My parents didn't take us anywhere, and it's funny how, as a person, you become very kind of like molded into these thoughts that you're given. And so when I started getting a chance to travel the world, and by the way, you don't need a big pile of money to travel the world. You just need the right job. When you find the right job, then you get out there. And one of the things that really struck me was how uncomfortable I was everywhere I traveled, because I had expectations that followed these conditionings from my younger years. And when I was able to release, and I just say simply, everybody in the world is working, eating, and sleeping. You're the one on vacation. And you can relate to this. Then all of a sudden you start to grow from these interactions. When I travel in Europe with my wife, a lot of times we'll just buy a ticket in and a ticket out in 16 days, and we'll figure it out where we're going to go, how we're going to get there. And a lot of the fun is learning like your body languages in communication with others, your voice tones, your inflections, and you start to comprehend that all humans can communicate with each other regardless of language. It's a whole different aspect that you're in. And that to me was not learned through a book or through a person. It was learned by putting myself out in these very uncomfortable situations, but addressing this idea that I could learn and I could grow. And as long as I had enough time, I could keep the stress levels in a place where I actually could change from this too. And it's really neat that at a young age, your family was inspired to keep you, to help you learn that. I know in my family, we're working with our granddaughter in the same way. Experiential learning is the strength. I mean, if you can take your kids out and let them experience from their own perspective instead of telling them how it is, they're going to grow up with a much different mindset and have these abilities to address, uncomfortable situations in fear and grow from them rather than hide from them and stay in that position that they've always had and not take that next step. It's very unique.
Yeah, and I think that's it's what you sort of leave behind too, right? So I like to draw, so I like to doodle sometimes when I'm on a call. It helps me think, helps me kind of clear the clutter. And when I'm, on the phone with a client, sometimes I'm doodling, and that again helps me focus in a different way. Or, aha, I've got the light bulb going off, so here's three more points that I'm going to bring, right? And so when my wife and I travel, sometimes depending on time, we'll do a bunch of little drawings, a little doodles, and we'll cut them up and we'll have them with us. And like when we go to a place like a restaurant and we settle the bill and leave our tip, we might leave a little piece of art behind, right? A little drawing.
Look at
And one
you.
time we had gone back to the same place years later, and we had the same server, and they're like, "I still have the drawing you left with the tip." And I go,
Yeah.
"Seriously?" And they had it, that little billfold that they have that the servers carry. They had it tucked in behind the laminate, and they thought it was such a cool little thing that we gave them a little drawing,
Dude.
nothing crazy, but it's just that little, like a little calling card. And when I can have the time to do it, it's fun. Or, when I send a thank you note to a friend or a client, do a little sketch, a little doodle. Like, I'm already thinking about the holiday card at home. Like, what's this year's little sketch going to be on the envelope? Those little things, but they mean a lot to people, right?
They do.
And then one time we did like a pineapple maze in Hawaii at the Dole plantation. And when we got done, and we chatted with our guide and we're about to leave, we asked like our host, we're like, "Would you like one of these drawings?" They're like, "You're gonna give this to me?" And we're like, "Yeah, it's a little drawing," but like they were super excited about it, right? So it's one of those little touch points. And then we're like, "Hey, if you're ever in Arizona, reach out." It's I guess it's a simple thing, but the impact is greater than even like we would think to know.
Well, you've learned it, and this is the point is, grandmother's example, your uncle's. I saw an experience I talk about a lot where this representative was singing to a crowd of people and he elevated their energy in a way where they left and it was the greatest night of their life. And I thought to myself, like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder if you need to be an artist to do that, or if this is a possibility that you can actually change others by just importing this light into your day every day and being authentic around that. And I think you just described that in the doodle drawings because I mean, look at the impact that you left in that restaurant. They walked away with something that they actually stuck with them and stayed with them and changed the frame of mind. And from your side, it's a small effort, but when you're invested into your life, and I like to say, like, if you're trying to make these adjustments in yourself and you're trying to grow as a human in your connection, it's not really about going and pouring soup for people. It's about sitting down at the tables and talking to them while they're having lunch. And so once we get kind of past the idea of what we're doing and experience this holistic life and get past the lifestyle, and then now you're in this quality of life, now you're shining this huge spotlight on everything and the need reduces and you realize the joy comes from just this interaction, and then that interaction starts to stimulate growth. And before you know it, Matt, you're a loved being in this world. You've got great friends in the industry. Everybody's doing their best to sell Tempe for you. But it's not because you're pounding at your computer every day in a business. You're actually holistically living it within your quality every day. And to me, that's just super impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think too, you and I've talked about this too, and I notice it too. Sometimes, like when we're at a show and it's long hours and it's a lot of engagement, a lot of conversations, sometimes you need that moment of retreat at some point, like when we get a break. You got to go and find that quiet space because as a leader or just somebody in the industry, keeping that energy up is challenging. You might be on a different time zone, so your food schedule's off by 2 or 3 hours that given week.
Yeah.
But that's what I find time, like that little moment of retreat. A couple weeks ago, I saw you. We had all of our events, but then you and I just sat and had like maybe like a 10-minute aside conversation and just kind of reset, recharged, and kind of went back about, meeting with the clients, meeting with,
Yeah.
other industry peers. But you got to reset. And I think it's how you start your day a little bit too. What is that good routine? And now my routine, I get to work a little bit earlier each day. I walk in my downtown, I see what's new, I see how things are shaping, maybe pick up, somebody forgot to recycle the water bottle, pick that up, put it in the recycling bin, and then have, a cup of local coffee, have breakfast in the downtown, and see, who the regulars and who's visiting and chit chatting with people as I go, and then make my way into work, set my day, see what's going on, what I need to tackle, and then when my team comes in, I'm already ready for the day. And so,
Yeah.
how do I make their life easier? How can I help them
Right.
with the things that they're working on? But you got to restore. I think that's the biggest thing. We got to restore our own energy so we can continue to be good with the leadership. And leadership it's multidimensional, right? It's not just like this linear path of here's what we got to check off and do. It's okay, thinking 2 years in the future for this next event.
Mhm.
How are we going to make this an outstanding event 2 years from now? Because sometimes the players you're working with along the way may have moved on. The same hotel person's not there, so you just got to keep moving and flowing through all those things, right?
Dude, you are an example for the industry that all can follow. I know people are going to want to reach out to you and connect. Give them the best way they can contact you.
Yeah, either reach out, Matt at TempeTourism.com, drop me an email, or find me on LinkedIn, Matthew Connelly, Tempe Tourism Office. Great way to connect and see how, again, I can help. Or if it's not me, someone in my network or, again, in the industry. Or a lot of the times people reach out because they're looking to find their way sort of into our industry, which is great. And we need to kind of restock the pond. We've talked about this as well. How do we get the next generation up and ready so they can be the future leaders? So if I have any wisdom, I'm happy to talk to the next generation of leaders who are wanting to make a difference in this great industry we're fortunate to work in.
Brother, you're walking wisdom. Everything that comes out of your mouth is in alignment and thought. I know that you're going to be getting some calls from some people after they see this podcast. I appreciate your time, bro. We're definitely going to catch up after the first of the year and see how things are going in the new market. We'll get into a little bit of a stronger, maybe an events conversation, because we both love to pitch around that idea too. But it's been a pleasure
Love it.
connecting with you today, bud.
Thanks, DeanO. I appreciate you, man.
Well, there we go. Another amazing example of the universe working in its magnificent way today. Appreciate you showing up and look forward to seeing you again at Leadership and Enlightenment.